In the War Within pre-patch, Dragonriding will now become Skyriding, adding a ton of new mounts that we can use with the Dragonriding system. However, not every mount will be usable. I'm looking at you, Otherworldly Took, but nearly all of them will be. So in this video, I wanted to run through 10 mounts you can work towards and obtain before the War Within launches. This is true endgame. Welcome to the video. The first one on the list is going to be the Spirit of Eche'ro, and it's going to be this Ghost Moose. And I kind of like the mounts that just aren't really intended to fly but can regardless. I just think it's a little bit silly, but hey, the mount makes it work. The main reason I wanted to bring this mount up on this list is because it's not always obtainable. About twice a year or every 6 months or so, the quest becomes available from the Legion archaeologist Lessa Moonwater, located in Thunder Totem in High Mountain. But luckily for us, on the 6th of August all the way up to the 20th, that quest does become available, and that's right before the War Within launches. So what we'll want to do is to first learn Legion archaeology. So we'll want to head to the Legion version of Dalaran, and that's if you don't already have the profession, and mind you, the skill level doesn't matter for getting the mount. Once we have that, we'll want to head to Thunder Totem in High Mountain to pick up the quest Laying to Rest from Lessa Moonwater, which will require us to dig up 600 bone fragments. Once we get 600, we'll hand them in and get ourselves the mount. It'll take some time, but I think it's worth for how unique the mount is in general, and especially since it's going to be one of those rare Skyriding mounts you can rock in the War Within. Next up, I wanted to talk about the Protoform Synthesis mounts that we can get from Zereth Mortis. This is going to be a bunch of different mounts that you can grind towards before the War Within launches, and a lot of the flying mounts from this are going to be Skyriding. Even the wolf for some reason, so for that quirky reason, I felt like I had to add it in. We'll also be able to get the Birds of Prey mounts from this and the Wasps mounts as well for Skyriding when the War Within arrives. For those who haven't unlocked this yet, we'll have to first progress enough in Zereth Mortis until we unlock the ability to upgrade our little robot Pokopok. I think that's how you pronounce it. From him, we'll be able to have this talent tree, and what we'll want to prioritize upgrading is the Sopranian Understanding. Once we're done researching that, we'll get new quest lines, which will end with a new architect. This will unlock the mount crafting system. From there, we'll unlock recipes to craft mounts by doing various types of content within Zereth Mortis. So hunting certain rares or doing the raid in the zone will give us the recipes for certain types of mounts, but if you're looking for a specific one, we do have a link down below to True Endgame's website, and using the mount collector tool, we'll just type in Shadowlands and we'll be able to see all the protoforms there, as well as a guide for how to get each one. So we'll pick one of the mounts and start working towards them to get them ready for when the War Within arrives. The next mount we're going to talk about is going to be the Smoldering Ember Wyrm, and this is a fantastic looking mount, even though most of you probably have this by now. If you don't, I feel like I had to mention it just because of how good it looks and how relatively easy it is to obtain now. It does have a little bit of RNG if you're doing this solo, but for the most part, it's quite an easy run to do each week until you get it. And the drop chances is fairly high even with that RNG. So what we need to do to get this mount is to complete the timed run of the Karazhan Mythic Dungeon. So we'll head over to Karazhan, we'll take the upper entrance, which is kind of off on the bridge to the right, and make sure you're on Mythic difficulty. You'll head inside by clicking the door, and now you should see a little bit of a message in the chat box, which means the timer has begun. What we need to do from there is to make sure to click each of the crystals within the timer. So we'll click the crystals and then move on to the next. The first one is going to be within the upper room after you kill the upper boss. It's going to be by the crowd area where they're kind of just standing around by these benches and they're looking at the amphitheater. There's going to be the crystal right there. The next crystal is going to be towards the maiden boss, but instead of going into her room, we're just going to take a left into the kind of bed chambers, and there's going to be a crystal at the end there. Next, we're going to head down and kill Maros, and we're gonna jump off the balcony down into Maros, and we're gonna kill him, and behind him are the keys which we need to click, and also the crystal. Then we want to head into this kind of main dance hall. We're going to take the right down the stairs, and in front of us is going to be the stables, but we don't actually want to go inside there. Instead, we want to take a left and then take another left into this kind of area with a bunch of spiders. We're gonna continue through the area until we go all the way to the end, and we're gonna take to the right. We'll find this area that's kind of like surrounded by cobwebs, and right in the middle is going to be the crystal. So we'll want to click that, and then we can take the portal from there as well, which will take us right to the beginning of the dungeon. This time from here, we're actually going to take the path to the left instead of the right. And from here, we're gonna find this kind of stone staircase that we can go up on, and we're gonna follow that all the way up until we find these wooden stairs. So we'll go up on those as well, and eventually we will end up in the curator's room. We're gonna defeat him and click the crystal underneath him. And if you can't click it for whatever reason, just loot him first and then you'll be able to click it. Once we're done with that, we'll have all of the crystals that we needed and the buff we have should have changed by now. Now we're going to head back towards the dungeon again, and underneath that stone staircase we took earlier, we want to take a left and there's going to be a wooden door that should be open now if you looted the keys. We're gonna go through that door and here we should find Medivh standing on the balcony. We'll speak to him, there's gonna be some RP, and then the Smoldering Ember Wyrm boss will spawn. You're gonna kill this boss and then you will have a 20% drop chance to get the mount if you're doing it solo. If you do this in a full group, the 20% chance will get bumped all the way up to 100%. And if you're the only person who needs it, then you will get that mount guaranteed. And before someone says RNG, percents don't really work like that in this case. So if you don't get it on your first kill, just keep coming back week after week, and since it is a weekly lockout dungeon, you can do it on your alts as well, and it's a very easy clear. So if you have any decently leveled alts, you should be able to do this no problem. And that is another Skyriding mount in your collection. The next mounts we're gonna talk about on this list are going to be the ones from the Mist of Pandaria remix. There's going to be a bunch of new mounts you can pick up, like the new Pterodactyl models or the Quillen models and stuff like that, but more importantly, we can pick up the old models from Mist of Pandaria as well. So that's going to include things like the Heavenly Onyx Cloud Serpents, the Thundering Cloud Serpents, just overall really good looking mounts, at least in my opinion. We can even get the new Emperor's Astral Cloud Serpent. So there's going to be a bunch of mounts from the remix that you can pick up, and with all of the buffs to bronze, it's very easy to do. Just leveling up to 70 will give you an easy 40,000 bronze, and then doing the daily quests at the bazaars or daily dungeon scenarios, stuff like that, will give you a ton of bronze as well. This event has around 30 days left, and once the event is over, these mounts are going back to being those RNG drops that we all know and love from Mist of Pandaria. So this is going to be your best chances of picking up these mounts, and I definitely would recommend getting them before the event goes away. If you're looking for something a bit more challenging to do, then the next mount we're going to talk about will be the Mage-Bound Spelltome, which will come from doing the achievement, A Tour of the Towers. This is tied to the Mage Tower, so you'll have to go to the Legion Mage Tower. You'll need to be at least level 50, and what you need to do is complete all of the different types of the Mage Tower. But remember, each of the spec is bundled into one of the 7 different kind of challenges that we need to do. I'll have a list on the screen now of the various different challenges and the ones that I recommend you could try it with. But nevertheless, you can try it with any of the ones that are eligible. You may find it easier personally if you're using a class or a spec that you're used to. There's also a couple of tips as well. First of all, you can kind of tweak a character. There's going to be a link in the description down below to a spreadsheet that allows you to get the gear that will kind of make things a bit easier. And that's kind of part of the fun for me, was going in, tweaking some of my characters, getting gear that would be really good for this challenge, which makes the challenge a little bit easier. There's also going to be an item, thank you Tiras who mentioned this on Wowhead, called the Volatile Crimson Embers, which is going to increase your damage done by 30%. Now, it will cause you to take some damage over time, but nevertheless, the damage output very much outweighs the cons. This will be an item that we can pick up from the PvP vendors in Vildraken, and the 30% damage done is going to be a big increase if you pop out all of your cooldowns. You're going to be able to burst some of these bosses down quite easily, so if you take the 2 tips together, you can twink your character out a little bit. You get the spec that's kind of more, viable for the challenge, and you can pick up the Volatile Crimson Embers, then you should have no problem knocking out these challenges. The next mount I'm going to talk about is going to be the Grotto Netherwing Drake. This is going to be an updated version of the old Netherwing Drake, which was the first model, and they still look good for their age, but this is an updated one which has a customization aspect with it as well. So you can kind of customize it exactly how you want it, and it's not that difficult to obtain. Originally, you can pick it up from the trading post, and that was removed. Now it's been re-added to the game as a reward to this questline within the Emerald Dream. You just need to progress through the Emerald Dream until you unlock the Rathian quest, which is going to be a dragon in hand is worth 2 in the roost. This is going to have a few quests in the chain, but it's not going to take you that much time. Once you finish that chain, you'll get yourself that mount, and then you can start working towards the customizations for it as well. The next mount up on this list is going to be the Corrupted Firehawk. I'd love to say that you could get the Pure Blood Firehawk, but that is going to be RNG. And yes, it is a better looking variation, but the Corrupted Firehawk is still going to look great. And this is all completely completely soloable now. It will require you some time because we're gonna have to do all of the meta achievements in Firelands. A few of these meta achievements are going to be a bit tricky, and that is going to be only the Penitent, and this can be completely soloed now, but you do need a class that has a good set of mobility skills. One of my favorite recommendations is Monk, because you can just throw down your Transcendence on one end, then you can run to the other side and click the orb before popping Transcendence again to get back to the other side and clicking the second orb. Since we can get both orbs clicked before the spell is cast, we'll get this trickier achievement done for the mount. As for the meta achievement for Shanox, I'd recommend killing the dog that pins you down, since you don't really need it anyway while you're taking Shanox around the other areas. Just make sure you don't do any splash damage and accidentally kill Shanox too. If you want a more detailed guide on doing only the Penitent and the other stuff within the meta achievement, then I'll have a link down below that covers the video, fairly recent anyway. The next mounts I wanted to talk about are the ones we can get from the Covenants in Shadowlands, since we can get quite a few from each of them. Now, if we've already gotten one character to Renown level 80, then we can use the item that this vendor sells by the flight path to boost our other Covenants all the way up to level 60. So for example, we can switch from Venthyr to Necrolords just to buy the other mounts from them. If we aren't Covenant level 60 yet, then I'd suggest doing the campaign quests of the Covenant's respective zones and doing some Torghast layers 9 and above, and some of the world bosses too. Here are the mounts we can get from each Covenant by doing this method. From the Kyrian Covenant, we'll get the Elysian Aquilon. From the Necrolord Covenant, we can get the Maldraxian Corpsefly. And as for the Night Fae Covenant, we'll be getting the Arden Wheeled Wilderling, or what we like to call the Noodle Dragon. And lastly, from the Venthyr Covenant, we'll get the Sinfall Gravewing. Now, the next mount I wanted to talk about is the SkyGolem, which is the only mount that allows us to gather herbs without being dismounted. Yeah, it's a dream mount for those herbalism gatherers. To get the mount, we can either buy it from the auction house or make it as an engineer, but take note, the price tag for the mount doesn't get any cheaper if you are planning to craft it for yourself. However, if you got the gold, I suggest you purchase it now since the investment is worthwhile. It'll be the only Skyriding mount that we can use to gather herbs without dismounting, and that skill is usually locked behind the profession skill tree. All in all, it'll make herbalists out there very satisfied with how useful this mount is going to be, especially when it'll become Skyriding. Now, the last mount on the list is going to be Blanchy, and to get him, we'll have to complete his daily quest chain that lasts for up to 6 days. Remember, we don't necessarily have to do it 6 days in a row, we just have to come back for 6 days in total. So if we decide to take a break on day 3, for example, and we come back about a week later, it won't reset the quest chain and we'll pick it up on day 4. Now, how this works is that every day the horse will require us to bring back a different item for his quest, and it's worth noting that you can collect all 6 items in advance, and that way when we log in for the day and turn in the quest over to Blanchy, we can proceed to do other things. So for day 1, we need to give him 8 of these handful of oats, and we'll be able to find the sack of oats in the farms located in Westfall over at Eastern Kingdoms. For day 2, we'll need to give him a grooming brush, and we'll need to speak with Snickersnee located in Darkhaven, and he'll give us the grooming brush. On day 3, we'll need to give him 4 sturdy horseshoes, and these are found on the roads south and east of Darkhaven, so we'll find them along the roads. On day 4, we'll need to give Blanchy a bucket of clean water. In order to get that, we have to go to Darkhaven near the carriage I'm showing right now. It'll be right next to Snickersnee, and we'll just click the bucket in order to loot it. To fill it up with clean water, we need to go to Arden Weald or Bastion, and once we have that, we'll turn it into Blanchy for day 4. On day 5, we'll have to give Blanchy a comfortable saddle blanket, and we'll be able to buy it for 30 pieces of random meat from Tatru, which is located south of Waincrip Hill on the flight point in the night market. On day 6, we need to give Blanchy 3 of these Dread Hollow apples. We'll be able to purchase the apples from Mims located northeast of the Charred Rampits over at the area Hole in the Wall. They'll be located near the flight point. Now for the somewhat difficult part, which is turning in the items to Blanchy. Every hour or every 2 hours, Blanchy will spawn on the river in Endmire, which is north of the Darkhaven in the zone located here on this map. It'll begin to run for about 5 minutes before disappearing or until a player intercepts it. Take note that Blanchy will run a lot faster than our mounts, so we'll have to get a good positioning in order to catch it. I'd suggest camping just a bit shy from the spawn point, and we'll just sort of run into it ahead of time to catch it. Once it stops, we can turn in our items for the day, and we'll have to do this about 6 more times in total to finally get the mount. But that's the end of the video. That's 10 Skyriding mounts we should get before pre-patch comes next week. If you found this information useful, then leave a like and subscribe, and be sure to check out True Endgame's Mount Collector tool to help you in your mount farming journey. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.